Hello and welcome to the A-List. I'm Andrew Pilewski. Joining me today is Steve Kashul from Chicago Bulls radio host. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Andrew. Thank you.
So, what are all the things you do? You're a man of many hats. You got a couple shows working on. So, what are you doing right now?
Absolutely. Well, we just got done with the Chicago Bulls season, where I serve as Chicago Bulls radio host, doing the pregame, halftime, postgame show. Also work on Bulls TV, which is something new for the Chicago Bulls on their website. Bulls TV, a brand that they're building. I also host the Golf Scene TV show on Comcast Sportsnet that airs during the summer every Sunday night at 6 p.m. And then I'm also co-host of Sports Medicine Weekly, which is a weekly radio show on ESPN 1000, airing every Saturday morning between 8:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. I co-host that show with Dr. Brian Cole. He is the Bulls and White Sox team physician from Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. So it's a lot of broadcast, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, sure is. So how did you get into all this? When you were in high school, did you want to be a sports broadcaster through sports media?
I wanted to be a professional athlete.
Okay.
So I played baseball and basketball at high school. My high school was Maine South High School in Park Ridge. And you get to a certain level where after the varsity seasons, you find out that there's no college scholarships. And you know what? I better think about something else. And I love sports ever since I was a young boy. And I thought the next best thing was to be a sports broadcaster. So I thought about doing that for a living.
Yeah, so you went to DePaul College in Lincoln Park, you said?
Lincoln Park campus, DePaul in Chicago.
Yeah, so what were opportunities there that you had to be sports broadcaster?
Not a whole lot. I actually started as a phys ed major.
Okay.
But I wanted to go to DePaul and commute and stay at home and work. So I thought about, where else could I search out my academic career and slowly build that towards a sportscasting career. So I started in phys ed, became an English major. By the time we had our junior year at DePaul, they had a communications department.
Okay.
So I was
So that came while you were there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I did an internship at Channel 5 in Chicago in their sports department, which was my big break because, and I suggested for anyone trying to go into sports broadcasting is to do an internship wherever you can. But fortunately, we're in a large market here in Chicago.
Yeah.
I did an internship at Channel 5 in the sports department with two guys, Chet Kopic and Rich Brenner, and it really set me up for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and sure did. So was that how you got your first job?
It was. I actually made my first audition tape in Durham, North Carolina, because Rich Brenner, who was the weekend anchor at Channel 5, who I interned for, he went back down to Raleigh, North Carolina after he left Chicago and Channel 5, and I followed him there. I stayed at his house with his family for 3 months, kind of as an extension of my internship.
Yeah.
Made my first audition tape. It helped me land me my first job in Wilmington, North Carolina at an NBC station. That was in 1986.
What did you do in Wilmington?
I was a weekend sports anchor. It was an NBC affiliate, and then slowly worked my way up towards sports director, which is the main job, the Monday through Friday anchoring. So I was a sports anchor there for a year and a half, and then moved on to Greensboro, North Carolina, where I worked with Rich, who I first interned for at Channel 5 many years back, kind of a dream come true, and worked for Rich and I worked for him for 4 years in Greensboro, North Carolina, at an ABC affiliate.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of cycling around North Carolina. So how did you get to Chicago from there?
1991, I found out that Sports Channel, which was Sports Vision, was starting to do studio shows in and around the Bulls and White Sox games. They were going to do pregame shows and halftime shows and postgame shows, and there was an opening for an announcer or a sports anchor, and I applied for it. And being from Chicago, I think that helped. I had a nice resume tape from all my years working in North Carolina, 5-6 years of experience, so I was lucky enough to land that job in September of 1991 when Sports Channel was just taking off and hosting the Bulls and the White Sox games.
So Sports Channel eventually disbanded. What are they now? What is Sports Channel now?
It was Sports Vision, Sports Channel, then it became Fox Sports Net, and now it's known as Comcast Sports Net.
Yeah.
Obviously airing the Cubs, White Sox, Bulls, and Blackhawks.
Yeah, they have all Chicago sports all the time, which is always fun for us around here in Chicago. But okay, so you came in '91, so that's the Bulls' second championship, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So how was that? Being in the Jordan era, the golden age of Chicago basketball. What was that like?
It was amazing. I mean, I fell into a nice thing. Actually, I was hosting Blackhawks games and Bulls games with another anchor named Jim Blaney.
Okay.
And then one time, I remember our executive producer walked in and he said, "You know what? I want to split you guys up. I want one to host the Blackhawks and one to host the Bulls." And Jim was there a year before me, and he was more of a hockey fan.
Okay.
So he said, "I'll take the Blackhawks." And I said, "Well, great, I'll take the Bulls."
Yeah.
I grew up more of a Bulls fan growing up, but I was also a Blackhawks fan. We were doing both games when we started, but then I became the sole Bulls host on television for Sports Channel, and worked the next 6 years and got to work with one of my boyhood idols, Norm Van Leer, a four-time NBA All-Star who was a guard for the Chicago Bulls, later became my co-host on Bulls broadcast, so that was kind of a dream come true as well.
So what was it like working with Stormin Norman with CLTV or where
Sports Channel?
Sports Channel.
Yeah, he was great. He was tremendous. I remember, I'll tell you a funny story.
Okay.
I was nervous the first time we ever went on, and it was the start of the new Bulls season. They just won their first championship. We're going to host the pregame show together, and here was my boyhood idol and a fiery guy, and I didn't know what he was going to say. And he was pretty, almost like, I wouldn't say a Dennis Rodman type, but he was pretty fiery. And the first show, we were about to go on the air, and he had a cup of water, cold cup of water, and he was sitting right next to me, and underneath the desk, we were about to go on about a minute before showtime, and he spills it in my lap just to loosen me up. And I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" So he spilled this cold water right in my lap, and sure enough, we laughed, the nerves went away, and the rest was history. We wound up winning 2 Emmy Awards for our work on Bulls television.
Wow, that's a truly unique story. Only someone like him would, spill out. You were probably like, "Oh my God, my bad, I'm sorry, I'm sorry."
Exactly. It was fun. It loosened us up, though.
That was fun. So, specifically working with the Bulls that era, did you get a different feel working with, like this championship expectation almost with the Bulls during that time period?
Absolutely. With Michael Jordan, once we won one championship, we knew we could win multiple championships. Remember, Michael went away during his first retirement back in 1994 after they won their third championship in '93. And that was a little bit unsettling because we didn't know if, oh no, that's the end of the championship era. Then fortunately, Michael came back to win 3 more championships. But it was great. We didn't even know what we were doing at the time. I mean, when you think back on it and the eyeballs that were watching us, we used to get bigger ratings than the Channel 5 and Channel 7 News at the time during some of those Bulls postgame shows because everyone wanted to watch Jordan and the Bulls.
Well, we'll be right back with more A-List after this commercial break. Welcome back to the A-List. I'm Andrew Pilewski. Joining me today, Steve Kashul, Bulls radio host. We're just about to start talking about, what is it like being the Bulls radio host? So your average day announcing a Bulls game. So how do you prepare for a Bulls game?
Well, I know every morning the Bulls Media Services Group sends out an email. I understand that I found out Tom Thibodeau, the Bulls head coach, gets it first at like 6 a.m. and then they send it to everyone else. Not that he edits it or anything, but it's kind of interesting. He reads through all the different excerpts from magazines. Mostly the newspaper beat writers are sending everything, but it comes from ESPN.com, Bulls.com, the Sun-Times, the Tribune. So they send us this email every morning, and I start going through that and start reading up on the stories and the angles. I also go to ESPN.com. They always have a preview of that night's game. I go to NBA.com. So I kind of do a lot of research over the internet and prepare myself for that night's game. And I've got my own little style. I always put together a one sheet before every game. I'll put Bulls and Miami Heat, Bulls on one side, Heat on the other side. In the middle, I put where they're playing. And then I'll have records for each team, whether the Bulls are at home or on the road, and then just tidbits and just some stats that I can refer to during my broadcasts. That's the best way I can prepare.
And so what's something you normally talk about on your pregame show? Just the storylines coming into the game, like this person didn't, and Joakim Noah, for example, got injured in Philadelphia in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and they started booing him. That's always a clash. Every time he goes to Philadelphia, he always hates playing there. He hates the fans there, the small rivalries. That type of stuff you talk about?
Absolutely, yeah. If we find some angles, and you brought up a good one, maybe whoever they're playing that night, the history of the series, something that's happened in the past. But our pregame shows, halftime shows, postgame shows are pretty well structured, where I always open up the broadcast and then I send to our play-by-play team, Bill Wennington and Chuck Swirsky, and they do a segment. We do the coaches show. Then I do an interview segment with some NBA scores and injuries. Then Bill Wennington and I do a segment where we ask a Twitter person on Twitter to chime in and deliver their question. And then Chuck and Bill do their own keys of the game. So they're very structured because they're sponsored, we have to do the same segment in each show. But yeah, we always trying to find different storylines to make them different.
Yeah, you brought up a good point there with Twitter. How is social media, texting? I know all the time ESPN Radio is always like, text this number if you want to interact. How has social media changed the way you host a radio show?
Well, it's great because we're able to keep up on any breaking news, any breaking story. So when I'm doing my show, I've got my notes that I've compiled throughout the day. I've got an internet connection right there in my computer in the studio, and following Twitter, following the latest from people blogging. You know, some of the ESPN and NBA writers. So it's changed a lot, but it's great because it's up to the second. Not only people's views, but breaking news.
Yeah. Well, that really is helpful to the average person. You know, really get a full perspective, not just what the professionals think, but what the average fan thinks. It's always awesome for as a fan to hear that what people are saying about the team, and you can sort of say, oh, that guy's an idiot, or that guy, yeah, I completely agree with that guy. And I love hearing the back and forth between like a caller on a radio show and a host of the radio show saying, no, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. No, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. It's always fun to hear that. So moving on, you have your sports medicine show. How did that even come out? I know you said that you went into to DePaul with a phys ed major. You said
right.
So how did was
no
that kind
connection
of like
there? Not really.
I mean,
no.
was that?
I do a lot of halftime shows, or did before we started the sports medicine show with the Bulls and White Sox team doctor Brian Cole from Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. He did both surgeries on Derrick Rose, the torn ACL and the torn meniscus, and got to know Brian Cole pretty well. And Dr. Cole came up to me one day and said, I'd love to host a sports medicine show on radio, and I want you to host it if you wouldn't mind. How does that work? So I said, well, I have some experience with hosting shows, and used to do a golf radio show with my Bulls show. So I said, we're going to buy the time on ESPN Radio, sell the advertising, and create this show. So 4 years later, we've done it, and we used to be on it for an hour every Saturday morning, 7 a.m. till 8 a.m. Now we're on at 8:30 a.m. till 9 o'clock, and it's gone very well. Dr. Cole really helps sell the advertising. His father puts together our website. His father lives in Boynton Beach, Florida, David Cole. We have a woman that helps market the show and get our interviews. I help produce the show. We have one of our ESPN people that from ESPN 1000 and engineers the show and helps us produce. So it works. It's a fine oiled machine, but we got it going now. It's 4 years in the making. 4 years,
it seems like a long time, and you've been producer that whole time since the beginning. You put a lot of personal investment into this show. Right?
Absolutely, and it's seasonal. We're going to try to do it year round. That's why we went to the half hour. But right now, or for the last 4 years, we've basically been doing after the Bulls season till the Bulls season starts. So basically, maybe early May. Actually, we started the show, I would say, in April. April until October and November. And then once the Bulls season kicks in, we're both very busy. So
yeah, I can imagine with him, being the doctor and you being host, that gets pretty busy. And then your third show is back to TV with Comcast Sportsnet and the golf scene.
Yes, we started this 21 years ago. And won a couple of national awards. Again, it was a group of producers when I was working at Sports Channel, came up to me, they were big golfers, said, you know what, we should think about doing a golf show. So we talked to the programming director, and he said, yeah, we can put that on the air. We sold our old advertising, have done so for 21 years, and I still work with some of the same gentlemen that I started that show with 21 years ago. And it's on every Sunday during the summer at 6 o'clock out of a primetime airing. It's a half-hour magazine-style format, working with guys from the PGA Tour and local golf pros, area courses, tips, equipment. So it's a show. I'm a big golfer. I love golf, so it's kind of a natural fit. Yeah. And it's another thing that I have in my broadcast resume. Yeah, just a similar theme throughout, doing what you love. Talking about the Bulls because you love talking about the Bulls, talking about medicine, and then talking about golf. It sounds all awesome. So, what advice do you have for aspiring people in broadcast journalism, and especially in the sports sector? Well, I think the internship is very, very valuable. If people can do internships, whether they're in high school, certainly in college, a lot of people don't take interns unless they're in college for college credit. So if you want to do an internship, or if you can do an internship anywhere, just get your foot in the door. It means so much. And when you do that internship, it's so important to dress the right way, be on time, stay late, try to give the extra effort, because that will be remembered. That's what I did when I was at Channel 5. Instead of going to DePaul University for one whole semester, I went to Channel 5 every day. Wow. I actually went 6-7 days a week. I worked with the sportscasters, and sure enough, it led me to my first ever broadcast job. Yeah. Just by them taking a liking to me, showing my work ethic, showing that I was there on time. I wanted to learn, and I found that it could be one of the most appealing and fun jobs I could ever have.
Yeah, you really can't ask for much more. Well, thank you very much for being on the show.
My pleasure, Andrew.
It was a lot of fun, and
thank you.
We'll see you next time on The A-List.